right, hi guys. So today we're going to be doing lesson 2 of our converting to slope-intercept form lessons. Yesterday we talked about how to write a equation in y equals mx plus b form. So for example, you have, why isn't this letting me write? There we go. Y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. And we talked about how later we're going to be graphing equations that don't necessarily look like this, but in order to graph these types of equations, we have to convert them into this form. Today we're going to be learning about a different form that's different than y equals mx plus b, different than slope-intercept form, called standard form. So what standard form is, and I would like you guys to write this on the corner of your paper, standard form is ax plus by equals c. So a, b, and c are all numbers, and a lot of systems of equations look like this. But just like we did earlier where we used our knowledge of solving equations to convert into y equals mx plus b, we kind of do the same thing here because we're not given our slope and y-intercept in standard form. It's just a form in which a lot of equations are written in. So for number 1, we're looking at the equation 2x plus 3y, let me turn it this way, equals 9. So is the slope of the graph equal to 2, why or why not? Is the y-intercept of the graph equal to 9, why or why not? The equation is currently written in a form called standard form. How can we rewrite this into slope-intercept form? And how does this equation differ from the equations that we saw yesterday? Those are the 4 questions that I would like you guys to try to solve right now. So I would like you guys to pause this, try it out, and then come back and see what we were working with, okay? This is just rough draft thinking, okay? Don't expect you guys to get this perfectly right the first time. This is the first time you're seeing standard form. So it is totally 100% okay to make mistakes, as always, okay? Go ahead and pause. Okay, welcome back. So is the slope of the graph equal to 2? Why or why not? It is not, and it's because the equation is not written in standard form. In slope-intercept form, my apologies. It is written in standard form. Okay. Is the y-intercept of the graph equal to 9? Why or why not? It is actually not. Sometimes when we have an equation written in standard form, the y-intercept does stay the same, but for a particular reason, this 3 here means we're going to have to divide by 3 at some point, because this says we have 3 groups of y, we just want 1 group of y. So when we divide by 3, that 9 is not going to be a 9 anymore. So the y-intercept of the graph will not be equal to 9. For the same reason. No, because the equation is not written in slope-intercept form. And the coefficient of y is not 1. Okay, so if there's a coefficient of anything before this y, that means our y-intercept is not going to be this number, because at a certain spot we're going to have to divide by 3. Okay, this equation is currently written in a form called standard form. How can we rewrite this into slope-intercept form? And that's by using our knowledge of equations. So I'm going to rewrite this equation And just like yesterday, I'm going to draw a line down the middle by my equal sign. And I'm going to circle the y because that's what I want to get by itself. Okay? Now, this is a lot like a two-step equation. And I'm going to show you guys what a two-step equation looks like. Okay? Let's say I have 2 plus 4x equals 6. Okay? This is a lot like a two-step equation. How we would solve this one is a lot like how we would solve this one, okay? And what I mean by that is I need to solve for x. First, I want to get rid of the term that's being added on. So the term right here is being added on to the 4x. So I want to subtract the 2 from both sides, okay? And I would like you guys to write this example down on your paper just so that you can refer back to it. When you subtract 2 on both sides, then you're left with 4x is equal to 6 minus 2. They're both constants. They're both like terms, so I can combine those to make 4. Now, when I have 4 x's, this means I have 4 groups of x equaling a number, but I only want one group of x, so I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides and get x is equal to 1. So our equations is going to look a lot different when we do this one. But the process is very similar to solving a two-step equation, okay? So I'm going to subtract this 2x from both sides because that is what's being added. So first I need to get rid of that before I do any dividing. So I'm left with 3y on this side is equal to, I can't combine these like terms. Yesterday I used the example of apples and oranges. It's a lot like adding apples and oranges. It's different. So I have to still combine them, but not necessarily add or subtract. So really I'm just doing negative 2x plus 9 here. Okay? So notice they are being added to each other, but I can't physically combine them. Okay? Now my last step is I have 3 groups of y here. I only want one group of y. So I need to divide everything by 3. And when I do that, I'm left with y is equal to, this ratio is negative 2 divided by 3. I can't simplify that in any way, so it's just going to be left as negative 2/3 x. Then plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, so how this equation differs from the equations that we saw yesterday, we had to do 2 steps. We had to add or subtract and divide rather than just doing one or the other. Yesterday we looked at one-step converting or one-step conversions. Today we're looking at 2-step conversions. So we had to perform multiple steps. That word's important, multiple steps in order to convert this. This equation to slope-intercept form. Okay. So that is our first activity, a little bit intro to standard form, a little bit of intro of how we solve for y equals mx plus b from standard form. Okay, so really, we can kind of check our answers to the first equation. We know we're right because our slope ended up being negative 2/3 and our y-intercept ended up being 3. It was not 9, not 2. Okay. So our activity 2, this was supposed to be a card sort for you guys today. But considering the circumstances, we're going to do it as on this video. So the 6 cards that you guys are going to sort are, let me write these down real quick. Negative 2x plus 3y equals 9. 2x minus 3y equals 9. 2x plus 3y equals negative 9. 2x minus 3y equals negative 9. Negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 9. And negative 2x minus 3y equals negative 9. So these equations are all very, very similar, but they are very, very different because when we convert these, they will be one of these four equations. Either 2/3 x plus 3, 2/3 x minus 3, negative 2/3 x plus 3, or negative 2/3 x minus 3. So we're going to convert these and then put them in here. What we can call to make sorting easier, we'll call this card A, card B, card C, card D, card E, and card F. Okay, so what I would like you to do is refer back to this front page where we converted this one, which is actually really, really similar to all of these. I want you to convert this one into slope, all 6 of these into slope-intercept form, and then we're going to see which equation it fits in, okay? Go ahead and pause and try it out. Okay, welcome back. Let's see if you guys were on the right track. I'm going to use a dark blue here. So I need to isolate this variable. So I need to first get rid of that 2x. But because it's minus, I'm going to do the opposite and add 2x to both sides. When I do that, I'm left with 3y is equal to 2x plus 9. I'm going to divide everything by 3. And I'm left with y equals 2/3 x plus 3. Okay, so it looks like I have a positive slope and a positive y-intercept. So if I look up here, the one that has a positive slope and a positive y-intercept is group A. So card A is going to go with group A. Now for card B, we're solving for y. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides now because it's a positive instead of a negative like the other one. So I'm left with negative 3y on this side is equal to negative 2x plus 9, a little bit different than our other one. So in order to get y by itself, I need to divide by negative 3 because I have negative 3 groups of y. I just want one group of y. And negative 3 divided by negative 3 will give me that negative 1. So when I divide everything by negative 3, I get y is equal to a negative divided by a negative will equal a positive. So this will actually equal a positive 2/3 x and then minus 3 because 9 divided by a negative 3 will be negative 3. So it looks like I have a positive slope and a negative y-intercept. So it looks like card B belongs in group B. On to the next one. We're going to subtract 2x from both sides because it is a positive 2x. I'm left with 3y is equal to negative 2x minus 9. See how this one's a little bit different? We have the 2 being negative and the 9 being negative off the bat. So now we're going to divide everything by 3. And because we're dividing by a positive number, everything's going to keep its sign. So this is negative 2/3 x minus 3. So both the slope and the y-intercept is negative, which is the same as group D. So card C is going to go in group D. Okay. Moving on to card D, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And I'm left with negative 3y is equal to negative 2x minus 9. Remember, I can't combine those terms. Then I'm going to divide by negative 3 all the way across because that's my coefficient of y right here. And once I do that, I'm left with y is equal to a negative divided by a negative equals a positive. Same thing goes here. So everything's going to be positive, 2/3 x plus 3. So it looks like it's going to belong in group A. So card D also belongs in group A. All right, moving on to card E. We're going to add 2x to both sides because of this negative sign here. Remember, we're doing the inverse operation, so we're doing the opposite. Then I'm going to divide everything by 3. And I'm left with y is equal to 2/3 x minus 3 because I'm dividing a negative 9 by a positive 3. So it's going to be negative 3. So my slope is positive, y-intercept is negative. So it looks like card E goes with group B. And on to this last one. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides because it is being, it's a negative. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides. I'm left with negative 3y. Remember, this is still here. We got to carry it down. And I'm going to divide by negative 3 because that's my coefficient of y. So we're dividing everything by negative 3. And we're left with y is equal to negative 2/3 x. Because this is a positive being divided by a negative, so that negative is still going to keep its thing. And then negative 9 divided by negative 3 equals a positive 3. So we have a negative slope, but a positive y-intercept. So that is our group C card, card F. Okay, so the biggest thing in this activity is to be very, very, very careful with your negative signs. Okay, big things to remember: negatives times a negative equals a positive. Negative divided by a negative equals a positive. Those things really catch you. Okay. Moving on to activity 3, equations of all forms. For each relationship described, write an equation to represent the relationship. I want you to try number 1 and number 2 really quick. It's only going to take you a few seconds. And then come back to me. Go ahead and pause. Okay, so a savings account has $50 in it at the start of the year, and $20 is deposited each week. So we have a starting fee of 50, or a starting point of 50, and we have a reoccurring $20, kind of like a rate of change. So after X weeks, there are Y dollars in the account. So Y is going to equal 20X because we're going to deposit this $20 each week. So we got to multiply that by the number of weeks that we have. And then we also got to add that 50 that was part of the start. So this is in slope-intercept form. For number 2, grapes cost $2.39 per pound. Bananas cost 59 cents per pound. We have $15 to spend on G, pounds of grapes, and B, pounds of bananas. Well, each banana and grape that I buy, I have to multiply it by how much it costs. And that added up needs to equal 15. So this is going to be 2.39 cost of a grape multiplied by how many grapes I buy, which is G. Then plus the cost of a banana times the number of bananas that I get needs to equal 15. So this is kind of the real life application of the standard form. Okay, so a lot of times when we have a constraint on our money, we can use this to kind of help us figure out our variables. How much can we buy of this? How much can we buy of this? What are our options? And we're going to look at how a fish market does this too. So the Fabulous Fish Market orders tilapia, which costs $3 per pound, and salmon, which costs $5 per pound. The market budgets $50 to spend on this order each day. Define variables and write an equation represented by the relationship between the amount of each fish bought and how much the market spends. So, based on our last problem, this sounds a lot like number 2. So our variables are going to be very, very similar. Just like number 2 was pounds of grapes and pounds of bananas, this is going to be pound of salmon and pound of tilapia. So your variables are always your unknowns, and we know the cost. We know how much money we have to spend, but we don't know how many pounds that they order. So those are our unknowns. So I'm going to put X as pounds of tilapia. Purchased. and y is going to be equal to pounds of salmon purchased. Okay. Now it says sketch a graph of the relationship. Label your axis. Hint, convert your equation into slope-intercept form. Okay, so I messed up the first part because I didn't write an equation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So my equation is going to be 3x because that's how much each pound of tilapia is cost. Then salmon is going to be 5y because if y is pounds of salmon, I need to multiply that by the cost of each pound. And then all that added up together needs to equal 50. Okay, so I am going to, first we need to label our axes. We know that this is the x-axis, which is going to be tilapia. And my y-axis is going to be salmon. And I'm going to convert this into slope-intercept form before I make my axes. So let's go ahead and convert this. I want to get it into y equals form so that I can graph this relationship. So I need to isolate this y variable. So I need to subtract 3x from both sides first. So I'm left with 5y on this side, because this cancels out. And I can't combine these, so I'm left with negative 3, I can't write today, negative 3x plus 50. Then I need to divide everything by the coefficient of y, which is 5. So I'm going to divide every single term I have by 5, and I get the equation y equals negative 3/5 x plus 10. So it looks like I can label these by ones. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Take a second and do the same. You can go all the way up to 12 if you would like. And based on our equation, our y-intercept is 10. So I'm going to plot my first point at 10. And I want you to go ahead and try to graph the rest of this equation based on your knowledge of a slope of negative 3/5. So go ahead and try to graph this, okay? Pause it here. All right, welcome back. So a slope of negative 3/5, slope is always rise over run, okay? But in this case, I'm not necessarily rising, I'm going down because of negative 3/5. So I need to go down 3 spaces, down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plot a point. So that's going to be where my next point is, okay? Then I'm going to do the same thing. From this point, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is my next point, okay? I cannot plot any more points, so I'm going to go ahead and connect with as straight of a line as I can make. And I know my line continues going. So based on this graph, I can now answer number 3, which is what are 3 combinations of salmon and tilapia that the market can order? Well, each point on the graph represents a different combination that they can order. This first point is the point 0, 10. And if our x variable is pounds of tilapia, our y value is pounds of salmon, one combination is 0 tilapia, 10 salmon, and this is pounds. I'm just being lazy and not writing it all. Then this one is 4, 7, which is 4 pounds of tilapia, then 7 pounds of salmon, and then this one would be 10 tilapia and 4 salmon. Okay, so each point on the graph is super, super important for us to work with. And converting into y equals or slope-intercept form is so important because we wouldn't be able to figure out those coordinates without doing so. So we just figured out 3 combinations that the Fabulous Fish Market can buy just by converting into y equals -3/5 x plus 10. Because based on 3x plus 5y equals 50, we can guess and check and kind of plug in numbers and see what works, but our graph really makes it clear what points make this equation true. And we found 3 points just by looking at our graph, which is pretty cool. Okay? What I would like you guys to do is put this paper, actually leave this paper out so that you can look at it while you're doing your practice. I want you to come back to me back at the L table, grab a practice sheet, and get started practicing converting so that we can practice more graphing and more word problems when I'm not here tomorrow and the next day. Okay? Thank you, guys.